Hello and welcome to the Valley Today. I am your host, Janet Michael. It is the Valley Business Today with the SBA. That means it's another conversation about business-related issues like marketing, my favorite topic, staffing, planning for a disaster, or in today's case, customer service. My co-host for this conversation every month is Carl Knoblock. He is the Virginia District Director for the Small Business Administration. We recorded it last week after we here in Middletown got a whopping 5 inches of rain in about 24 hours, which will give you some background for our chat. And by the way, I do not recommend First Choice Septic out of Strasburg in case I was a little too subtle in our conversation today. Today, we are talking customer service, mostly because I've had quite a week. And in telling you about my week, you said, Janet, customer service would be a really good topic for us to talk about for small businesses. And I 100% agree. I was telling you that it is the one thing that any and every small business has 100% control over. They might not be able to control tariffs or product prices or transportation issues, any of that sort of stuff, but they can 100% control their customer service. And some of it's really, really bad.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to bring that up. I've seen a number of people say, I will stick with them no matter what because of the customer service. And I'll give you a case in point. I'm a disabled veteran, so I go to veterans hospitals for service. Okay. I go to Lebanon, Pennsylvania for my treatment. And people say, why do you travel so far? I said, it's the customer service. I've been to all the others, and I said, they do not match theirs. And that's why I go to them. We all have that right and ability. And more times than not, if we get really good service, we're loyal. Even though there may be changes in prices and things like that, we stick because we know those people treat us as we're special.
And I feel like it's not as big a deal now as it used to be. Like if you talk to, say, my grandparents' generation or even my parents' generation, they made their business decisions not at all based on the price of a product or a service, but based on how they were treated when they bought said product or service.
Yeah, I just cannot stress enough to people. And I know it becomes much more difficult in our times today. And I know you deal with this on a regular basis, Janet, is with social media, because it's really changed the customer service playing field.
And I'm not saying that you have to make every customer happy every time, because that is not even slightly possible. But you have to make the attempt.
You're only as good as your word. And if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're not, then understand when you're a business, that really comes back and haunts you.
The example that we were talking about before we got started. So as we're sitting here recording, I am coming out of a 5-inch flooded basement, trying to deal with all of the things that are happening. I hope that as people are listening to the show on the radio or on the podcast, that is a distant memory and that my basement is clean and doesn't smell and there's no more water in it. That's my hope. But to get to that point, one of the things that I had to have happen was I needed my septic tank emptied because my sump pump, which failed, was emptying into the septic tank that was full, that was then sending it back into the basement. It was just a vicious circle. I already had a company booked for a regular septic tank emptying, and then we got 5 inches of rain in 24 hours. Now I'm calling around who can come. I get that I'm going to have to pay a premium. Found somebody on the internet that is less than 10 miles from my house. Call them up. Hey, I really need to get this done. Is it at all possible? If it's not, that's fine. But can you do it? Yes, we can be there this evening. Okay, he'll be there this evening, probably after 5. He'll call you when he's on his way. And we waited. And it got dark. And then it's the next day. And I am now 2 days out. And I'm still waiting for this dude to call and say, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm really sorry. Can we do it the next day? Or I'm not sure who you talked to in my office, but they never should have told you that I'm not going to be able to get there tonight. Not a peep. So what I'll say, so that I don't get myself into too much trouble, is they will never be my first choice for emptying a septic tank ever. That being said, next on the list, I call Green's Septic. They don't know me from Adam. It's this morning, literally at 8:30. I call, I leave a message. This is how funny it is. In the middle of the message I'm leaving them, kids on scooters roll through our neighborhood to put flyers indoors for, I guess, landscaping or something. My dogs don't like kids on scooters. So the dogs are barking so loud, I can't even finish my message. So I have to hang on the phone, call them back and say, okay, I'm the weird woman that just hung up on you in the middle of the message, but here is what I need. 30 minutes later, I had a phone call. 2 hours later, my tank was empty. Great guy. Best part, they made a bit of a mess when they were taking their hose back up to the truck. Got out another hose, cleaned it up. They didn't have to do that. Tim's standing right there with a hose. Tim can clean up whatever little bit of dribble. No, 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 no. We'll take care of it. That's customer service.
Yeah, and it's a thing you'll never forget. And probably from here on in, they're the person you're going to be calling to empty your septic tank.
I have already added to my calendar 3 years from today with their phone number to schedule my next emptying of the septic tank. I tried to get them to do a radio show because I wanted everybody else to know how amazing they are, but that's not in their wheelhouse. Maybe I'll keep working on them. Maybe I can convince them.
And what's really fascinating, a lot of people look at that type business as dirty and think, why would anybody do that? And then here they had a spillage, and most of the time, come and say, well, I'm done. I'm heading out. Sorry. Yet they were conscious enough to sit here and say, yeah, we don't have to do this, but that's a reflection of us. And no matter how much I showed up early, 2 hours, did your thing, you're going to remember that I left your driveway dirty.
That's true.
That's what customer service is so critical, because any place along the way you hiccup, it's like our news. We only want to hear the bad news. When we
Right?
get the good news, we get a small segment. So no matter how great the good news is, that one bad news segment, that's all we talk about.
It also points out that customer service is not your staff or employees being nice to your customers. It is so far beyond whether or not someone is polite and says hello when they walk in the door. That is important, but it goes a lot further than that.
Yeah, I think we have to understand cultures. Americans as a society, we're smilers. And if you come in and you don't smile, people will say, well, what's wrong with them? It may be their personality, but because that's how we ease people by smiling, that makes it seem we're friendly, it's okay. If you don't do that as a business, it really makes people uncomfortable. And no matter how good a job you'll do, they'll say, well, they weren't really friendly. How were they not really friendly? They did a great job and all, but they don't smile. I've heard that so many times. They don't
Right?
smile. Those little things that you always try to tell me, practice on your smiling to just make people feel at ease.
Good customer service also, like in my example, isn't limited to retail or restaurant. It is the service oriented businesses. Several months ago when we had to have our panel box replaced, that guy swept up all of the sawdust and he cleaned the basement in that, can't tell now, but he cleaned the basement. It looked better when he left than it did when he got here. Those are the kinds of things that anybody is capable of.
Yeah, and case in point that you brought up, because it was an emergency. People have this mindset that they have other things going on, so it's excusable. And what that showed to me, at least, with all the stressors going on, because it's technically like a natural disaster, they had the professional courtesy to make sure to say, no, your home is special. And I want to make sure that I leave it better than when I came, which no matter what they did.
Do you think that small business owners aren't training their staff in good customer service? Do you think that those that don't even have staff and it all falls on them, that they're so overloaded and overwhelmed with day to day and all of the crises that are happening that they just don't think about it anymore? Because I feel like it's really hurting them.
Yeah, you hit on a point that we're actually seeing in businesses all across the country, and that's a key component, soft skills. The one thing that companies are doing, they're taking people my age, much older, and literally hiring them, even if they're only going to have them part-time, because they understand customer service. When they're getting a young person, that young person has a totally different concept of what customer service is. So it's like two different worlds. At the end of the day, that young person doesn't have the concept of what a customer is that is going to buy your product services because it is not their company. They just say, I am here. I showed up for work. So
I
that's a
know.
bonus.
It's right. I know.
It
Pat me
is
on the back
because
and say how
I,
glad you are that I showed up for work today. Because
I can do a case in point where I was just with a small business. They've been impacted severely by Tropical Storm Helena. And I was going up to try to help their business recover with some ideas and things like that. It was on a Monday and she was exhausted. She's older. She's in her 60s, her and her husband. They said, I don't know what to do anymore. These young people just don't show up. They're my workforce, but they just don't show up. They just call off because they said, oh, we have this activity. No consideration of the ripple effect. But yet they'll come back the next time we're supposed to work. I'm here. Not understanding that this is not where you come in when you feel like it. There's a reason why we depend on you because we're technically a family, we're a unit. And if somebody is not there, it creates a disruption. And now somebody has to pick it up. And so people say, it's not the big deal. I said, no, think about it. They have a small hotel above the place. They have 3 rooms. So those rooms are all occupied. So those rooms have to be cleaned. So somebody has to do it. They have a small kitchen where they feed people. Somebody's working that. And then there's somebody that does the orders. And then there's the general store. So you technically minimum 4 people. Take it down to 2 people.
somebody is not getting a full experience.
Yes, people are waiting 35 minutes for a hamburger.
They will
Yeah,
if they understand your plight and they feel bad for you and you are apologetic and maybe you throw in an extra soft drink or ice cream. It's not that complicated to still make them walk away after waiting 35 minutes for a hamburger to say, you know what, I really love this place. I know it took them a little while, but I really want to come back here again.
yeah, and that's the whole thing. Those people that understand customer service always will find a way to try to give a positive experience because that's what customer service is, have a positive outcome. But this is why a lot of employers right now struggle with young people understanding how important customer service is. It is not a burden. It is a fact that maintains that long-term survivability of that company, which gives employment opportunities, not only to you, but in the future to other young people. And if it fails, everybody loses in the community. It says you got to remember if they're successful, they typically then do things for nonprofits in the community that helps the community. And this is what we talk about that simple acts of customer service benefit the whole community long term. And lots of people don't understand that.
And when we're talking about a younger generation, I think one of the hurdles that small business owners my age have to overcome is the communication barrier. We don't even know how to talk to them. We don't understand what's important to them because as you're telling that story, the first thing I'm thinking of from a marketing perspective is those employees don't have a connection to the work that they do or to the people that they do the work for. Because if they did, they would then understand what a problem it was going to be if they didn't just show up. So that has broken down already. And how do you talk to these kids that are used to staring at their phones, quite frankly, and get them to understand? It's like the granddaddy of all customer service ever is if you can get Gen Z or some millennials to understand where you're coming from as a Gen X or a boomer.
Yeah, and Janet, you hit on a really key point because we have those foundations that were ingrained from us from childhood. And a lot of that is because we interacted when we were children. Think about today. I laugh when people say, yeah, they're on a date and I'm watching them texting and everything across the table from each other and not ever exchange a word. And I'm going, that's the new style. But unfortunately, that's not the style that still works in the environment where you're wanting some type of service. That philosophy of treat people the way you want to be treated. I remember someone saying, understand who your customer is because maybe the way you want to be treated is not the way they want to be treated.
Yes.
And so I've literally had to step back and understand that and always keep that in my head that I really have to hone in on that customer. It's just like I have to learn body language. And that's probably one of the biggest thing that I think a lot of people miss is understanding the body language of a customer. As I said, if you smile, it relaxes. You don't smile, it creates tension. If you're not a smiler, that's okay. What other things can you do to decrease the tension so they feel comfortable? And so you're absolutely right when you talk about those things that things we were taught are not in the same context today.
two things about that. I'm trying to remember who it was now. It was probably about a year or so ago. I had, and I'll say kid with air quotes that nobody can see, that I was talking to on the show. We get done with the whole recording and he had this look on his face. And I said, did we forget to, is there something that you forgot to say that you want to add back in or any of that? And he says, no, I actually have a question for you. And I said, okay, what's up? He goes, do you know that you said my name 7 times during this whole conversation? And I'm like, I didn't count, but was that bad? He goes, why do you keep saying my name? I know what my name is. And I said, well, A, it's interviewing 101, but B, I was raised to, when you're talking to someone, you address them by their name. It's, again, how I was raised. So if I'm talking to you, I may say, Carl, do you think that blah, 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 blah? It's just what we do. He was mystified by that. He had never seen it, never heard it, didn't understand it. And then he told me that it kind of creeped him out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, that is good information to tuck away for future knowledge.
That's the big challenge right now that we have with customer service. Like your experience you just had, the father was there and his son. There's already a generation difference, but your husband was talking to the father and they were, as you said, they were connecting.
Yeah, they were talking about roller coasters at King's Dominion. I'm not even sure how that topic came up as he was emptying my septic tank, but it did.
He knows that people don't like what he does for a job because it's a dirty job. And the
And
way
people are embarrassed.
he knows what he does for a living, and he has to make sure that people are okay and it's not a big deal. And so he's learned a customer service skill of let's talk about something. And it totally distracts you from what's actually going on at that moment in time. And then you were talking to his son. It seems like he's learned the language of distract them from what's going on because they can smell it and everything else, but it's okay because we're having a conversation.
Oh
And
yeah, he and I talked about the Wawa coming in out on the corner. We talked to told us a little bit about how long his dad's been doing the business and that he was only along this morning because his dad needs help getting all the hoses off the truck. He actually is in charge of the portable toilet side of their business. But they were concerned that dad was going to have to lug this hose, so one of them got voted to come on the truck. I should not in theory know that much about the septic tank cleaning business, but now I feel like they're my friends.
And lots of times we take so many things for granted. So just like our indoor toilets, bless the plumbers for the work they do, for the challenges they face, just like the people with the septic. But I have to laugh because my daughter, she's really into rating toilets, portable toilets. Royal Flush in our area is the primo deluxo in her eyes. Always clean, smells good. It's a porta potty, and she has never gone into one that hasn't had that. So when she goes into others, the first thing she comes out and says, nope, doesn't meet the standard. Oh, it was clean, but the smell wasn't there. So she has a standard benchmark. I always say that's the thing. Your company, Green, is now the standard from a septic standpoint in your eyes that this is the way it has to be done. And anything less is unacceptable.
They were fantastic people.
But now, because of what you do, especially your community efforts and things, a lot of those events need porta potties. And so now you're a reference. That's what customer service has done. It has potentially increased other business for them in other aspects that they have just because of the experience they gave to someone that they've never met before in their life and literally now can be a stepping stone for more opportunities for them. And that's what customer service does.
When you were talking earlier about how you would want to be treated, a couple of years ago, I had a client that owned a coffee shop. So, of course, that's typically your teenagers and your kids home from college age type people. And he couldn't seem to get them to understand when he said, I want you to treat them like you'd want to be treated. Well, again, how you're going to treat a 45-year-old single mom who just needs that cup of coffee is a whole lot different than the other 17-year-old, 18-year-old who's going to come rolling up in there to make their order. One of the things that we tweaked within their training process was don't treat them the way that you want to be treated. Treat them the way you want people to treat your mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of universal.
That's a great analogy. Social media has created that because think about it. Would you want your mom to see that on social media? That's the reference point all the time. They always go to the mom, never the dad. the mom.
Right. Because most of the time, dad's behind him high fiving saying, hey,
Yeah.
good job, kid. Try that again. Do you have any advice for small business owners that maybe think their customer service isn't up to par and don't know what to do to improve it?
The one thing I've learned, especially now in today's time with so many help wanted signs, that has not gone away since COVID. People are literally stretched to the limit, and a lot of business owners are working way more hours than they ever thought they would have to. But it's their dream, it's their passion, and they're going to keep plugging away at it. Companies like yours in marketing, it's like, how do I sit here, number one, marketing from the standpoint of how to get good talent so it can help free me up. But at the same time, marketing to also make it easier that people, when they come in, will know some of the challenges that I'm going through and that I am supportive of them and to understand I am there for them. And then number three is they may have to change how they do their business based on what they have for bandwidth. That's what I told the couple. And they said, what would you do? I said, what's your money maker? What's your profit generator? Well, the rooms. I said, okay, that one's in. The general store's got to stay. I said, don't do the kitchen. That way you eliminate two bodies. Those are the two bodies that are regularly not showing up. You can manage until such time you get yourself to where you need to be. These are decisions you have to make at times, unfortunately. We all have to evaluate. Our small business development centers have those tools. But people that have that marketing experience, companies can look at it. Most of the time when people ask, they say, help me with my company. And I'm saying, no, just don't ask that from customer service. Ask the standpoint, how do I help myself get talent that they want to be here? Help me to let my customers understand the dynamics going on in our local economy that creates the challenges we face. We have to step back and say, what is actually going on in people's lives? Lots of times you may see the work experience or a friend's experience, as I call it, a basic friend. But if you're not a deep friend or a loved one, you don't know all the other things going on in their lives that potentially is impacting. And that's what I always try to stress to people. Sometimes we have to take a step back and try to remember in my own life what else is going on that sometimes doesn't make me the person I really like to be all the time. And
Right.
it's not anything that I'm against, it's just something that has come up. That shows that human side, that we're
Oh,
all
yeah.
human, we're not perfect, but at the end of the day, and as a small business owner, just like you talked about, Janet, somebody may be held up, they just bought the drink and the drink spilt on the floor. I've seen where the store owner said, you can buy a new one, I'll give it to you at a discount. And then I've seen others say, I'm sorry, don't worry about it, we'll clean it up, I'll make you a new one. Everybody approaches it differently, and you, as the person experiencing it, will decide whether you come back to that store again based on that experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And the downside, I guess, to all of it overall is that Green Septic is getting all kinds of kudos and shout outs on the radio show today. But if we weren't on the radio, in real life, when all of my friends, and likely on Facebook later today, so go check that out too, I will say this is the company that didn't show up. And I will tell way more people about that bad experience than I probably will the great experience that I had with Greens, which kind of sucks for Greens, but I feel like I need to warn people about this other company and the fact that they were not my first choice. Again, that's all
Mhm.
I'm going to say.
That's the thing I always step back to is that bad news travels further than good news. And that's unfortunate. They say you got to have 10 good news for one bad news. So when you get something bad about you, you got to work that much harder to try to get good. And you're never going to get back the customers that you thought. You're going to lose a proportion of it, no matter what. And that's just business, and you have to accept it. Don't try to get them back. You just have to understand that's their standard. You accept that and you appreciate what they did for the time they were your customer.
As we wrap up, I'll add one thing to your piece of advice as well, which serves two purposes, is ask your customers.
Hmm.
Say, hey, what's your favorite thing about shopping here, eating here, doing business with me? Ask them because they will tell you, and you might even be surprised that it wasn't even something that was on your radar. And it serves two purposes because now you have knowledge and you know what you're doing right or doing well, so you can do more of it. The other thing is, whenever you ask a customer for their opinion, it raises that customer service even higher. Now they're like, oh, They wanted to know what I thought. They asked me because my thoughts and my opinions are important to them. It raises that commitment and that connection to you or your business up even higher. So don't be afraid to say, hey, just out of random curiosity, why do you come in here so much? Or what's your favorite thing about shopping here? It's not a hard question. They may say, oh, I don't know. They may say, oh, I love when so and so's working. They may say, I really like the atmosphere, like the music. It could be any number of things, but that's all good information to have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because it tells you the type customer you attract, and it helps you design your marketing to obtain more of those type customers to come into your place because those are the ones that help your operation grow.
Thank you for taking some time to jump on the Zooms and chat today.
No, it was great. And like I said, it was odd how we had to jump on this. And I hope we never have to go through that type of experience again.
I 100% agree with you. And again, I hope that by the time people are actually listening, that it is a distant memory.
That's right. But we can always say the pastures are greener.
The pastures are so much greener, and so is my tank. I'll have to send him that tagline. I'll give it to him for free.